All right, thank you for coming. So here we have with us today a professor from the new University of Lisbon, Rosario Monteiro, and she's going to be talking to us about, the transformations, the recent transformations in the hero myth structure in Ursula Le Guin's Earthsea, and she will try to raise some doubts on Campbell's hero journey structure. So, when you're ready.
First of all, good afternoon. I want to thank Martin and Raul. Yeah, that awful teacher who crossed your names when you entered in. Okay, for inviting me to be talking to you and to make a suggestion that I would be talking about Ursula Le Guin. I've been in a sabbatical year, I can hardly remember now, working precisely on Le Guin. And there are some lacking here, okay? Somehow I couldn't yet manage to destroy the big one. I will do it in time. This is an idea I've been working whenever I have time to think about when we are teachers and researchers at the same time. That Ursula Le Guin is trying to adapt the hero myth as it was defined by Campbell and Jung and many others, that she used in the first three books, knowing that she was using them. And she tried, as she did most of her life, if not all of her life, keep in touch with reality while writing fantasy and science fiction, because as she says, she never cared and never wrote about the future. She always wrote about the present. Well, maybe you heard of Fernando Pessoa. And this is a line from the poem Ulysses, who supposedly founded the city of Lisbon, who supposedly was somehow our ancestor and so forth. And what he says is that myth is that nothing, that is everything. When I first started lecturing literature and mythology for graduate students, I faced the problem of having to find a proper definition of myth they could work with. When one enrolls in the field of mythology, one finds that several areas study this phenomenon from different perspectives, therefore creating the definitions that better suit each area at a specific moment. Well, in comparative literature, one has to use several subjects other than literary texts. It is a necessity that comes with the territory, and you have to embrace it to do our research properly. Anthropology, sociology, psychology, history, the arts, literature, of course, they all study myths, and they all present different definitions. After a long search, I think I found one that is broad enough to cover comprehensive corpora, but solid enough to allow students to use it, not as a dictum, but as an operative structure, able to be adapted to their needs, though solid enough to serve as a foundation. The late Professor Victor Jabouille He was professor of classics at University of Lisbon, the old University of Lisbon. Wrote a good definition, in my opinion, in the late 80s. Unfortunately, he died too young to leave us some more pearls of wisdom. And it is a very little book entitled Iniciação à Ciência dos Mitos. Hardly you can find it now. Okay, it's from the Stone Age. What it says is, myth is a narrative, and with my students, you usually stop in this sentence for about 3 weeks trying to find out what a narrative is. Whose author is unidentifiable because it belongs to the collective cultural heritage that has some theme, that has for theme a legendary, ethnic, or imaginary background based on the tradition, and that, once accepted, is integrated into a system, in most cases a religious one, and many times under a literary form, oral or written, tending to join other similar narratives, thus forming a mythology. Well, according to Jabu, it is possible to divide the myths, and he does, into a typology. He divides it into 10 types. I don't find it so necessary because, in fact, most of the times myths just mix several typologies in one only narrative, particularly when they lose their religious dimension. That is something we can't forget, that the original myth is not literature. The original myth is a sacred narrative with prescribed rites, prothetic narrative. You only have to think about Christian Church, for instance. There you have a myth that is tied up with rites. Only some people can perform, that are performed in a very precise way, with a rigorous timing, and so forth. And that is also why when some book or some film comes up dealing with the New Testament, most of the times the church reacts badly. And when I say the church and the Christians, and they are entitled to. For them it is a sacred myth, so it should be protected. But when it is no longer sacred, then literature is allowed to deal with it wherever and however the author wants. At this moment, we are only concerned with literary myths, and then with one kind of, in particular, the hero myth, that is a universal myth, a myth that is different in different regions, but has a structure that is similar all over the world. To help me, I call on Joseph Campbell, who dealt with this particular myth. Others also did, but I have to ignore them, or will be staying here by September 2020, which he called the monomyth. It's a name he brought from Joyce. He didn't invent it. The journey of the hero. Campbell's definition is firmly based both on the analysis of anthropological information and then on Jung and post-Jungian psychological theory. Therefore, Jung and two of his colleagues in particular will also function as support for my concept of what the hero myth is. I suggest you read two fundamental texts. Men and This Time. It's a collection of essays, and there is one essay in particular dealing with the hero myth and modern men. I can't remember now who the author is. And the origin and history of consciousness. That one is nice, so you see it's all burned out by the sun. Sorry. And you are not allowed to see the thickness of the book, nor what is inside it. And then I will refer to the last one just a little bit further. Well, these authors established the paradigm of what is myth, particularly in Western culture. And we have to pay attention to this. We are going to talk about Western culture, because what happens here is not what happens all over the world with the hero myth, okay? Okay, we were colonizers, but we have to stop and think that there is more than just us in this world, okay? And people think differently and live differently. And Campbell did this. He offered us a structure, something I could and can use, copy, adapt endlessly, because it is always a there and back again. It always starts in one place, ends in the same place. And it can be repeated endlessly and produce the same effect on readers every time. It can become a formula. Lemming is this fellow over here. Over there. There. Lemming develops Campbell's structure and divides it and brings up a lot of examples, so I advise you to complete the reading of The Hero with 1,000 Faces with Lemming, The Voyage of the Hero. You can skip a lot of pages, so it's fine for just finding information fast. Now this is a structure that, with variations as to where some events happen during the voyage, can be reproduced endlessly and always cause the same effect on the reader or the player. This is the structure of most of role-play games, RPGs. I learned this with my sons. And I also learned they cheat. And unfortunately, also in many contemporary fantasy novels. And who says this is Mr. Atterbury. There is nothing wrong with this, just it is not literature. It is literature that is going to be forgotten because it brings nothing new, because it just simply reproduces a formula. To be literature, to live in time, the text has to do more than just reuse the same formula again, okay? And sometimes it takes a lifetime to do that. What the hero myth and tradition makes clear is that the hero is male, that at the climax of the quest he acts alone, and that though the voyages being always a there and back, there must or should be an upward spiral of the character's psychology, meaning the one who comes back is psychologically changed by his quest. There is no universal tradition of female quests. And that is the problem Le Guin had to face in her cycle. There are female myths, but they are frequently connected with the female role in traditional societies. And these have to do with breeding and burying, like the word matter. Come on now. Earthsea is a lifelong work, just as Middle-earth was for Tolkien. Le Guin started it in 1968 with The Wizard of Earthsea. And the last tale was published, it's a short story, was published after her death, Firelight. And I'm gonna spoil it. When Gad finally dies. And I hope Le Guin died as Gad did, calmly. Now you can read. It took her 50 years to change, to find a structure that could adapt the hero myth to modern times. 50 years. Some people don't live that long. Looking back now, one can clearly see the evolution of the hero myth. Well, Darko Savin defines the Earthsea cycle as being, in fact, 2 trilogies. I don't quite agree with him. They are not 2 different cycles, just one cycle evolving in time. Also, that is done deliberately. Le Guin wanted to change the hero paradigm. And she wrote it, she published it. In our hero tales of the Western world, heroism has been gendered. The hero is a man. Women may be good and brave, but with rare exceptions. Women are not heroes. They are sidekicks. Never the Lone Ranger, always Tonto. Women are seen in relation to heroes, as mother, wife, seducer, beloved, victim, or rescuable maiden. Women won independence and equality in the novel, but not in the hero tale. This is more than a statement, it is a challenge. She has been a challenger all her life. However, she does not want to destroy the ancient tradition, instead to adjust it to modern Western culture. Le Guin was always very careful, stating that we need to know the past so you can avoid making the same mistakes in the future. So she's not trying to get rid of the hero myth. No. In fact, she says, the tradition I was writing in was a great one, a strong one. The beauty of our own tradition is that it carries you. It flies and you ride it. Indeed, it's hard not to let it carry you, for it's older and bigger and wiser than you are. It frames your thinking and puts winged words in your mouth. The hero myth is open to adjustments in each tradition, though it's being a universal myth. A living myth has the ability to change, a dead one does not. Like Antigone, for instance. No one in Western culture today would write something about Antigone. It makes no sense. Because when it concerns my family or the state, well, the state can go to hell. My family comes first. So it's not an issue for me. The peculiarity of Earthsea is that the creator is aware of that need to change long before the cultural system is changed. And this is what we expect of great writers, and particularly of writers of fantasy. They are the ones who create new worlds. There are many definitions of fantasy. The most celebrated is Todorov's, wrongly, in my opinion. By the time structuralism got hold of fantasy and fantastic, critics discovered that this genre escaped their narrow-minded definitions. Structuralism was useful to show us that there are structures we can identify, but they were lousy in interpreting semantic meanings of the words. And it is in the meaning, or meanings, that the novel attains and gives the reader the absolute freedom. It is not something built like a Lego construction, meant to be dismantled. It is a fictional world to be discovered. And Le Guin went back to Earthsea to discover what had been going on while she had been away. She found the traditional hero myth died in the shores of Celidor. However, life continued, and the world, in a world in turmoil, needed new heroes, different ones who could solve the chaos into which the greed for power had led. She discovered a fantasy world was naturally showing reality, our reality. People corrupted by the ambition of power, the world unbalanced, society oblivious of its past, and consequently repeating the same mistakes over and over again. This isn't fantasy, this is real. This is what we must see if we clean our windows, as Tolkien suggested. This is what is in use every day now. Not that they treat it quite reasonably enough, or with enough reason, I don't know, or reasoning, just making it like a show. It's not a show, it's a fact. In the whole cycle, there is a pivotal tale, a center from which change will spread, expand like a universe. And it reminds me of Italo Calvin's short story, All at One Point. In its expansion, it connects loose ends, unfinished tales, and flickering insights. I'm referring to the tale Dragonfly. As in the male hero tale, Dragonfly is an orphan with adoptive parents raise her, to each names her during the night instead of during the day, and there is no party afterwards. She sails to Rock to find her true nature, breaking the taboo. There were never ever women in Rock. And she is taken under the protection of Master Partner. Finding a true name and nature is a double act because it frees Rock from the dominion of Thorion, a dead Maeg returned to life, and Dragonfly is no longer incomplete. She finds her true nature and her full name. That's something she always says, my name is Irian, but it's not my full name. There is something missing in my naming. And in fact, she is Orm Iriam, daughter of Khalesin. The basic structure of the hero myth are all present, but a woman takes the leading role. As Nar will tell Sezerad, the king's bride, she has to find her courage herself, to find out who she is by herself. This changing of paradigm continues in Teanu and closes in The Other Wind. The Other Wind continues and makes consistent changes introduced in Dragonfly, namely the use of a female hero, but goes even further. With the final novel, Le Guin managed to interweave the new paradigm fully within the Taoist philosophy, recover some elements of the hero myth set forward by Tolkien, and establish a new pattern for the hero myth. Theanu is finally identified as the woman in Gaunt, as the master partner had perceived, would be the savior or the hero of Earthsea. She, as Dragonfly and the traditional hero, is an orphan brought up by adoptive parents. She is unwillingly called into action, like Frodo. She discovers her true nature, becoming a dragon, daughter of Khaleesi, sister to Orm Irian, able to fly the other wind. However, Le Guin sets now to add a radical change into the moment the quest is accomplished. Remember, according to Campbell, when the quest is to be finished, the hero is alone, okay? There's no one to help him. It is he and his free will. The usual pattern insists that the hero being alone. Modern Western culture, and never forget that we are dealing only with changes in the hero myth as it is used in Western culture. Okay, this is a technique teachers have to put things inside your mind, okay? I've said this 3 times already, and I believe I will say one more. We are dealing with Western tradition there 4 times. No longer accepted that the radical solution to a planetary crisis may be solved by one person alone. Men and women must solve threats to the world together. The main action depends on combined efforts of Theanu, a shy and silent young girl, and the humble sorcerer Alder, who gives up his only power to prevent further injuries to people's life. They are the new Frodo and Sam. And this is so Sam-like. Alder felt that, like him, Theanu was there not by choice, but because she had foregone choice. Driven to follow a way she didn't understand. Maybe her way and his went together, for a while at least. The idea gave him courage. Knowing only that there was something he had to do, something begun that must be finished, he felt that whatever it might be, it would be better done with her than without her. Perhaps she was drawn to him out of the same loneliness. You may remember that scene when Frodo says, when Sam says, yes, I've seen elves, but I know there is something else I have to do. I don't know where, I don't know what, but I have to do it. So I go along. It's exactly the same decision. They are the ones who start destroying the wall that prevented humans from true death. Now, something that had bothered me in the first part of the cycle was the world of the dead. It made no sense in the Taoist way. And the 3rd volume is, we have the most beautiful definitions of Taoism. And that world, when I read it, it kept on annoying me. It made no sense. It couldn't be just the opposite of life, because that isn't all there is to know about Taoism. Well, it seems it bothered her too. However, Le Guin goes even further. No, sorry. In Taoism, death is just a natural return to nature, from which we are born. The final integration into the complete natural cycle. So there is nothing wrong with death. There is nothing to fear from death. death is just the most natural thing that can happen. Happens to us, happens to everybody. And as Irian says, we all are just beasts that speak. But we are beasts. We are part of nature. We don't own it. She owns us. Ursi begins the action of freeing the dead, but they do not accomplish it by themselves alone. They receive the help of the maids and dragons because the whole existence of living and talking people, talking beings, depending on the combined willing to give up power. And it is very hard to give up power. Look at our politicians, the lies they tell so that they can stay in power. Mine do. Most dead, it is beautiful. Oh, sorry, I should have put it there. This is the moment when the dead, they are calling to be free. They just want to be free out of that shadowland, that dry land. And this is the moment when they get free. They no longer press, they no longer cry, they no longer shout, they are silent. Most dead came forward afoot. They were not pressing, not crying out now, but walking with unhurried certainty towards the fallen places in the wall. Great multitudes of men and women, who as they came to the broken wall did not hesitate, but step across in and were gone. A wisp of dust, a breeze that shone an instant in the ever-brightening light. Fire broke from the far black peaks of the mountain called Pain. The fire that burns in the heart of the world, the fire that feeds dragons. The balance is restored. What was once one species had been divided in two. One part was air and fire, the dragons. The other was water and earth, we. They each will follow their different ways, and they all be reunited in death, and attain true immortality. How? In nature. Then I had a quotation by Lao Tzu, but I just missed it. Sorry. Again, following Tolkien steps, though through a different path, Le Guin brings forth the weak and turn them into heroes who, changing the mythical quest, are not fighting for power, but rather to become powerless and humbly only do what must be done. And this is probably one of the best speech Goethe has in all of those pages. He's trying to teach Lebanon, Haran, the future king. And he says, on every act, the balance of the world depends. The winds and the seas, the powers of water and earth and light, all that they do, and all that the beasts and the green things do, is well done, and rightly done. All these act within the equilibrium, but we, insofar as we have power over the world and over one another, we must learn to do what the leaf and the whale and the wind do of their own nature. We must learn to keep the balance. Having intelligence, we must not act in ignorance. Having choice, we must not act without responsibility. If there were a king over us all again, and he sought counsel of a maid, as in the day of old, and I were that maid, I would say to him, my lord, Do nothing because it is righteous, or praiseworthy, or noble to do so. Do nothing because it seems good to do so. Do only that which you must do and which you cannot do in any other way. I don't know if you were aware of this, but Le Guin's editor of the third volume returned the volume to her and said simply in a paper, Goethe is talking too much. And she had to revise the whole novel and cut a lot of Goethe's words and speeches and so forth. So I believe the best she did leave. Alternative to this beautiful prose poem, we have the quiet words and slow words of the partner. Once, when my lord the Archmaid was here with me in the grove, he said to me he had spent his life learning how to choose to do what he had no choice but to do. What drives Earthsea to the age of chaos is the same futile, impossible wish humankind keeps on struggling to find and to get power through it, and that is immortality. Now, immortality isn't a choice, and we know this probably by whatever, 7 millennia, and we seem to keep on needing someone to tell us that. What did Gilgamesh want? He wanted immortality. What did they told him once and again and again and again? Immortality is not for people. Immortality is for the gods. But he insists, and he goes, and this is the part I love best, is when he meets Utpanishin and his wife. And now, take a moment and think what your life would be, your life, you, with your boyfriend, your girlfriend, whatever, your beloved one, living together, alone, on an island, forever, and ever, and ever. Every day, every single day, saying the same things, seeing the same faces unchanged. No, thank you. I'd rather die. Really. Forever having the same arguments every day. Endlessly. Because life is not just roses. It never is. So even for those humans living in that island with this very, very, very stupid boat captain that doesn't mean much. Come on now. And even so, Gilgamesh doesn't see what is in front of him, doesn't understand the punishment, unjust punishment that was imposed on that couple. And he insists, and well, the wife says, oh, poor fellow, he's traveled so long, just give him immortality, he wants it, give it. Well, the serpent is wiser, and the serpent eats the flower. Eats the flowers, and it solves. There, you want your lollipop, it's gone. No more immortality from now on. But we still have Gilgamesh with us, so he is immortality. Immortality for us is as long as we stay in the memory of the others. That's enough. The rest is just, as Hamlet says, dust. Alexander's dust, probably in a barrel of beer. Well, this is well, I admit in the beginning I had 3 pages of bibliography. So imagine what I cut and cut. In the past 2 days I've been cutting to get to this. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Rosario, for this very interesting presentation. Are there any questions? Okay.
You did mention how basically literature is the not to succeed if it keeps repeating itself. But do you believe that it is possible for the, let's say, schematics of a literature genre, of, in this case, like the tale of the hero, if it's done to the utmost perfection, to succeed, even though it has been told 1,000 times? I don't know if I'm making myself clear.
Just to see if I got it clear. If you can perfect it, if it can become perfected?
Yes, if you...
No, it won't ever be perfect. There is nothing we can do that can be perfect. No point. It cannot be perfect. Even it can be filled as it is perfect now. It will be flawless tomorrow, in 10 years. It has to evolve because it is from our nature, and we are made to evolve. So everything we do either evolves with us or just dies. So it happens to the myth.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Rosario, for your talk. It has been a pleasure to listen to you again. I don't know if it is a kind of question of some thinking, but the point is that you have already said that you have started by saying that universal myth is similar all over the world, and your starting point has been Campbell, and okay, the psychoanalysis and so on. But I was just thinking about one fact. When everything started with Freud, more or less, let's say, then out of his scholars we can find Jung and Otto Rank. And the two of them, especially Rank, finished the myth of the birth of the hero just before the First and the Second World War. But on the other hand, Campbell, as an inheritor of Jung, finished it just after the two world wars. So that's one thing, that we are going to have one focus just creating after the wars, and the other one is before. And when we think about modern fantasy, especially the fathers of modern fantasy, Tolkien and Lewis in England or Le Guin in the States, those three writers are sons and daughters of this second movement, while on the other hand, I don't know, MacDonald's fantasies or Alice in Wonderland, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz and so on, belongs to that or the previous part. Can we apply, that's the first question, in the same sense, psychoanalysis for those kind of previous fantasy works in the same way? And the second one should be that, it's related to nowadays. Now, I think that we have in a kind of, when Campbell started with the Hero with the Thousand Faces and so on, that was just a really pessimistic moment because the world was destroyed. But he gave us, through the skin, a kind of new perspective, something positive. Moreover, fantasy at the time was also very positive, with the Inklings, with the wind and so on. But nowadays, if we just keep an eye on that type of, I don't know, postmodern fantasy with, for example, Stephen King's The Dark Tower, we can see that there's a mixture of gothic science fiction, fantasy, but we can apply that canvas skin. And moreover, now we are not going to find lollipops. So now that everything apparently is positive because our life is easy, in a sense, in comparison, we have a negative perspective. And then, which was the opposite, the perspective was positive. So it's weird in a sense, isn't it? I don't know.
That's the way well, I think I'll start with the end of your question. That change, that feeling of security and insecurity and so forth, that's natural. That's how human nature has evolved. It's how history has evolved. Now, who gave us the first real investment in the hero were the Romantics. And with them, Romantics were very different all over Europe. And with them we have the nostalgic hero and the bright hero, the solar one, the positive one, and the negative one, in this respect. Now, Lord Raglan, the Golden Bough, and so forth, these are theories that come after the Romantics in a period of positivism, and is marked by that. When social science, you got it, social sciences, it's so hard to say that, were trying to acquire the same dignity as the art sciences. So they had to base themselves on facts. Well, Campbell goes further than Rank and Fraser and so forth, because he has access to myths that they didn't know. They knew myths, the European myths, basically, and he goes beyond those myths. So he has more information that allows him to have a more positive view. But I think the great change that came from Le Guin and Tolkien and the new generation that wrote or whose work was published after the Second World War. I don't think it is a positive view. Not really. Because basically what he says is that try to be content with your own tiny structure and give up power. There is nothing harder than to give up power, any power. Even women, when they are mothers, they have power over their children. They have to let their children go. They have to free them. Sometimes they have to push them outside. It's like, go, you're growing up, I won't give you soup today. Go find yourself a place. They have to do this because we need to grow up outside in the world. The mothers that can't do this, they raise unhappy people, dominated, that let themselves be dominated by the others. They will be unhappy for the rest of their lives. So this is a tremendous power women have. and we learn that we have to give it up. Come on. It's easier. No, it's not easier for us, but it is a power that is much more important than money, or political position, or fame, or whatever. I'm not quite aware, or I don't know much. To say I know nothing about very recent fantasy novels. But there is, well, I'm sorry. I hate the Game of Thrones. Sorry. Okay. I hate it because it's a way to make money fast. I feel that is someone betraying the art of literature for the sake of quick money. Sorry, I can't read someone who acts like this. I just can't. As I do not read the Portuguese Nobel Prize that Le Guin liked a lot, and I even tend to forget his name. We only have Saramago. You see, we only have one, and I tried several times to read Memorial do Convento, and the last time it flew out of the window, literally. And when my children were in school and they had to read the Memorial do Convento, I told them, sorry, no can do. You're on your own. You want help with Camões? Okay. You want help with Fernando Pessoa? Okay. Saramago? Go to hell. So, because literature is always an art, and as an art is something we have to enjoy. If we don't, it's the first aim of anyone who creates anything, to give a pleasure, any kind of pleasure, some sense of pleasure. And the last text the last author I really got pleasure from reading fantasy was Terry Pratchett, because he managed to deconstruct the epic of fantasy, and he, even so, say very, 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 very important things in a different tone. So it was not light, it isn't light literature, though we laugh a lot. From there on, I'm sorry, I didn't and do not have the time to read more books that are waiting still there in the shelves. Nor the money sometimes to buy them. Okay, but that's another problem.